Leonard Susskind graduated from City College with a B.S. in physics in 1962 and received his Ph.D. in 1965 from Cornell University. He began as an assistant professor of physics at Yeshiva University and then Tel Aviv University before arriving at Stanford as professor of theoretical physics and the founding director of the Stanford Institute for Theoretical Physics. Among many specialties in physics, including quantum field theory, quantum statistical mechanics, and quantum cosmology, Susskind is widely regarded as one of the fathers of string theory. His career has been marked by notable contributions in the areas of the application of string theory to explanations of the dual resonance model of strong interactions in particle physics. Susskind's books, The Cosmic Landscape and The Black Hole War, have brought him more mainstream attention as a major thinker in physics and cosmology. He won the Pomeranchuk Prize in 2008, an award for distinguished science writing, the Sakurai Prize in 1998, along with the Boris Pregel Award from the New York Academy of Sciences in 1975.
It's an honor to be here and receive the Townsend Harris Award. I became a little curious about who Townsend Harris was. Turns out he was a diplomat in the early 1800s who negotiated a treaty with Japan, and an educator. And most interestingly, he was played in a movie by John Wayne. But to me, Townsend Harris always means the college building across from Shepherd Hall, where I learned that something called physics existed. First of all, I want to thank Professor Alexios Polychronakis, himself an eminent theoretical physicist of great accomplishment and a professor at CCNY, for nominating me. Let me tell you a little about myself and my family. I came from an immigrant family who came from Russia, Poland, Lithuania around 1900 to escape the Tsar. They settled in the South Bronx in extreme poverty. My father, Ben, was born in 1906. There was no safety net at that time. And in 1918, when Ben was 11 years old and in the 5th grade, the family was thrown into the street with all their belongings. He had to leave school and go to work as a plumber. Ben was a very strong person and managed to pull his family out of poverty and send his sister to college, Hunter College, by the way. But still, by the time I was a young teen, things were still very tough. At the age of 14, I went to work in the same profession, but I was able to continue in school. I did plumbing in the South Bronx for about 7 years, summers, weekends, after school. But when I was around 16, my father had an idea. All the old furnaces in tenement buildings in the South Bronx needed replacement, and he and I would go into business replacing them. The problem was, it took some engineering knowledge, which he didn't have. His idea, I would go to CCNY and learn some engineering. I was good at math and I was admitted on probation. The first year at City College, I learned physics 7 and 8. I don't know if physics 7 and 8 still exist at the college, but what that was basic elementary physics and calculus. I loved it and I found I was good at it. But by the second year, I ran into some trouble. The trouble was engineering. I was not cut out for engineering. And the specific problem, mechanical drawing. There was a professor of mechanical drawing whose name was Harold Rothbard. We became, incidentally, lifelong friends, but Harold Rothbard came over to my table one day while I was doing mechanical drawing, and he looked at my drawing and he said, "Susskind, I'm going to fail you in this course." And I said, "Well, Professor Rothbard, I can't fail. My father's waiting for me to go into business. I have to become an engineer." And he said, "No, you're not cut out for engineering. I'm looking at your drawing, and all over the place, it's the sloppiest drawing I've ever seen, ink blots all over the place. You can't be an engineer." And I said, "What am I going to do?" I thought, this is it. This is the end. He thinks I'm stupid. I'm not going to be able to come and become an engineer. And he looked at me and he said, you have the mind of a scientist. You're very smart. You should become a scientist. Don't think about engineering. It was probably the best advice I have ever had from anyone. I went around looking at the various sciences at City College. First, I tried chemistry. To me, science meant chemists in white coats. But the chemistry professor told me, no, you'll have to take an extra 2 years of chemistry. You've never studied chemistry. So I went to the mathematics department and I met a professor, a very famous mathematician by the name of Jesse Douglas. Jesse took me under his wing a little bit, but eventually he also told me, no, you're very, very smart, but you don't have the mind of a mathematician. You have the mind of a physicist. Go see Harry Sudak in the physics department, which I did. Harry Sudak was a guy from the same background that I came from. He smoked big cigars. He was a legendary professor at City College, and he took me under his wing. Within 6 months, I was hooked. Harry began to explain some things to me. I had assumed that all physics was done a few hundred years ago by Englishmen and Europeans, but Harry explained that physics was far from finished. It was a living, breathing subject with deep mysteries about the nature of the universe. And best of all, I could be part of it. During that period, I had worked out a new way to express some equations. They're called Maxwell equations, to be exact. Harry showed them to another professor, Lawrence Wills, a CCNY professor who was expert at Maxwell's equations, and he got excited. He took me to Columbia and to Princeton to explain my ideas. I was doing a lot of physics at that time, but not making much progress toward a degree. But eventually, with the help of yet another professor, Arthur Bierman, I was admitted to Cornell University as a graduate student. I was a bit lost and homesick when I went to Cornell University. It was the Ivy League. I had come from CCNY, a very, very different kind of institution, and I missed it terribly. I was terribly homesick for CCNY. I would have gone back to CCNY in a flash. But there I was at Cornell, a graduate student. I did well at Cornell. Eventually, I became a professor of theoretical physics. Some would say the professor of theoretical physics at one of the world's great universities, Stanford. I'm old now and have had many experiences, both in the world of science and outside it. But there is no question the defining period of my career, the inspiration, the open possibility was the time that I spent at CCNY, and I will forever be grateful for that opportunity. I had a student recently, well, not so recently, maybe 15 years ago, whose name was Jonathan, who came from City College, a graduate student who came to Stanford, who came from City College. He also came from a poor family. His father was a New York City cab driver. His mother was from Haiti, when she was a seamstress. Jonathan had made his way through CCNY and studied physics. And when we got to talking, when he came to Stanford, I discovered that his feelings were exactly the same as mine about CCNY, about the opportunity, about the open possibilities. And he loved the institution just as much as I did. I'm not sure how many years, almost 50 years after I had been there. So I think things have not changed, and I'm very glad to hear that. In conclusion, let me thank you for the honor of the Townsend Harris Award. Thank you, everybody.
In you, Leonard Susskind, your alma mater has particular reason to rejoice.